Well, I think maybe the first thing to say is that, especially in developing countries, it took a long time to come to terms with the fact that so many women were in business. And that was the first sort of thing that we needed to do, was to convince governments that women were in business. And not necessarily in what we in the North see as business, but very, very tiny businesses. The woman who brews beer in her backyard and sells it to the market is just as much a businesswoman as, you know, someone who's got a big factory or something. So that was the first thing, to get recognition. And since that, then there's been all sorts of support given at all different levels, primarily, though, to the bigger businesswomen. And the priority now is to get attention given to more of the grassroots people, who in fact make up the majority of the business population in most countries in the developing world. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. But we're beginning to see results. There's been a lot of work done on credit for these businesswomen, on getting them technologies to improve their businesses, on getting better training, on getting market information. And that's where organizations like ITC would come in to get that type of technical and market information. I think we had a slow recognition there were any women there at all. And then we had the learning curve for women who were supplying domestic markets, and then we sort of flattened out a bit. And now we're trying to see what's happening to women who are now having to get out of domestic markets and into export markets. And that's a whole different ballgame. Many of the issues are the same, they're just far more complicated, and therefore far more assistance is needed to overcome them. I think it's always come from the bottom up, but I think the change is it used to come from NGOs who talked and advocated on behalf of rural businesswomen. Now it's coming from the women themselves, because they've been given assistance to organise into associations at regional level, national level, local level. So they have a voice themselves, and that is the new place where the change is coming from. I mean, I think the fair trade movement, even though it's still quite small, is something that's really interesting, because that does come from NGOs working with farmers and agro-processors at the grassroots level, who have said, look, you know, we need a better deal here. We're working for $1 an hour or whatever it is. And that has actually gotten through the fair trade movement to consumers in North America, Europe, Australia. And I mean, it is small, it's growing exponentially, I mean, but from a small base. So, I mean, the fact it's growing at 300,000% a year doesn't really mean that much right now. But it is beginning to have an impact in that a lot of producers are now talking about fairly traded, which is different from having a fair trade stamp. But they've got the message that you need to treat who you're buying from with more respect. So I think, you know, that's an example of how something that's started small can actually begin, you can see it mushrooming, which is great.